What's up, everybody? Jackson Fuller here, Owen Hassell with me, and our weekly tradition continues. We're discussing high school football in the area, specifically the Mid-Eastern Conference. And Owen, we thought we might have a little bit of history last week at the West Brunswick-Hogger game with the Trojans finally beating the Vikings for the first time in 22 years. It happened. West Brunswick 14, Hoggard 7. And coming into the year, I think we thought, people around the league thought, West Brunswick thought, the Trojans might be conference contenders this year. We'll have to see, but they've got the senior leadership. They've got the defense. They are. They officially are. There's one huge game against New Hanover coming down the road. We'll talk about their game against North Brunswick a little bit later on in this video, but just impressive from the Trojans to beat the Vikings. No matter what state Hoggard football is, that's a big win for the West Brunswick football program.
It's just another step forward for Brett Hickman and this program, what he's been able to do just to instill that sense of community. It never hurts when you're from a community and you come back to coach. People see the boy coming back home to do good in the community. That's what he's done. And really, from day one, instill that pride of you're from West Brunswick, you're from Shallotte, you're from Calabash, you're from, keep going with different areas of that part of the county. And people were buying into that, into it maybe a lot faster than even we could have imagined. That winning helps. It never hurts.
Absolutely.
And I think from the beginning, we all pointed to that Whiteville game. If West Brunswick could get through Whiteville at Whiteville, what could happen here? It could be a lot of good things, and that's exactly what's going on.
Well, yeah, 6-0. And you talk about that Whiteville game at the time, 20-0 win for West Brunswick. You're like, ooh, maybe Whiteville's not as good as we thought they were. And now they have just absolutely rolled over everybody they faced, scoring about 50 points in every game, and they scored 0 against West Brunswick. That defense is legit, and they're going to have another test this week against North Brunswick, who, while the Scorpions, in their one huge game in the MEC so far, they struggled against New Hanover. Against everyone else this season, North Brunswick has played really well offensively. They're coming off a 57-point performance against Ashley. The Trojans and the Scorpions, West Brunswick 6-0, 3-0. We've talked about their improvement. North Brunswick won 2 games last year, 1 game the year before that. They've already got 5 wins this season. I think West Brunswick's the favorite, but hey, this is a game that, as the Star News, we have to go cover it. It's 2 really talented teams from Brunswick County in a rivalry game, and I think Leland is going to be looking forward to getting a shot at the undefeated Trojans on Friday night.
Yeah, once again, if you're North Brunswick, you get to play that spoiler underdog role that I'm sure Brian Davis relishes, and the job he's doing there, I think, like you mentioned, is very similar to what's going on in Shallotte. And I would argue even more impressive because of what happened last year with Florence. The number of players that were displaced, it seemed like from North Brunswick, was more than any school in this area.
Yeah.
And to get a lot of those components back or just bring in new elements, freshmen, sophomores, what have you, and to have this type of a season is just as impressive. And we keep going back to who would be coach of the year in the Mid-Eastern Conference. There are a lot of candidates for that.
I think right now we're down to a three horse race for Coach of the Year between Brett Hickman, Dylan Dimmick, and Brian Davis. But North Brunswick, they've had not only last year, this year they've gone through so many injuries. It feels like every time I call Brian Davis, he's complaining about another injury, and they've got some good numbers that they haven't had in years past, and they're a very well-coached football team with Coach Davis and Jonathan Taylor, who we know was a good coach at Trask, got that program to new heights. He's, coaching, running the offense over there. So in this game, look, West Brunswick hasn't scored more than 21 points in any game this season. North Brunswick's going to score, not going to score, but North Brunswick all season, their offense has been the strength. Can the Scorpions hold around? I don't know if their lines on defense and offense can go toe-to-toe with West Brunswick, but it'll be interesting to see, which of those 2 teams' strengths really asserts itself on Friday night over in Leland. That's the game I'm going to be covering. As always, follow along at StarNewsVarsity for Twitter updates. So I think we're going to learn a lot about North Brunswick this game. 5-2, 2-1 in the league. It's a great season regardless. Could it be a special season if they can hang tough or maybe even upset the Trojans? The team that lost on Friday night to West Brunswick, Hoggard, another huge game for them. And the Vikings and the Buccaneers. Hoggard's going to be hosting Laney this Friday. I joked before we turned this video on, it's a loser leaves town game. It's not quite that, but whoever loses this game probably isn't going to make the playoffs. If I had to guess, Laney, if they lose this game, I'd say they definitely won't make the playoffs. They'll be 2 or 3. They'll be 2 games behind Hoggard with 3 to play, and Hoggard will have the tiebreaker. The Vikings, if they lose this game, would be tied with Laney or 2-1. Laney would be 1-2.
We're already getting confused about what's going on with these
scenarios. We are. But Hoggard would be tied with
Mm-hmm.
Laney, and Laney would have the tiebreaker. And the Vikings still have New Hanover left on the schedule, whereas the Bucks have already played New Hanover, West Brunswick, and Topsail. This is a huge game for 2 teams that came into the season with, Laney's goal was to make the playoffs. Hoggard, after the injuries, I think their goal was let's find a way to get to the playoffs and get healthy. You lose this. Whoever loses this game probably not going to make the playoffs.
Is it a 50-50 game right now? When you looked at the start of the year, Hoggard wins this game, but Laney's got some options on offense. Laney has shown at enough times on defense that it can compete with anybody in this conference, and Hoggard has trouble scoring.
Yeah,
that's just no other way around it. Hoggard has trouble scoring against anybody, and if this can get to be a higher scoring game, I'd pick Laney.
I think I told you today when I walked into the office that I was actually impressed with Hoggard on Friday night. That offense has trouble scoring, definitely. But the defense is legitimately just as good as it has been in years past. I think the secondary is not as good, but that defensive line is better, I think, than it was last year. The linebackers are, they miss Garrett Manning, who's hurt right now, but Patrick Tutu's leading that unit, and they're playing fantastic. And Laney, when they face teams that can throw the ball a little bit, like Scotland and Carolina Forest, they struggled. But against these Mid-Eastern Conference teams who are not necessarily lighting it up passing other than Topsail, they're just fine. I think Hoggard's defense is going to make life very difficult for Laney. Can Laney score 14 points, 20 points? If they can, they've definitely got a shot. But I think the Vikings have to still be considered the favorites in this one. Last week, we were not calling them the favorites against West Brunswick, despite all the history. I still think where these 2 programs are at, Hoggard should find a way to win this game. But the Buccaneers, they only have 1 win this year, and you're giving them an opportunity to say, hey, go get yourself a playoff berth right here. It's all in front of them.
And last year is last year, but I was at that game with Laney and Hoggard. Laney should have won that game with a Hoggard team that was a legit 3rd round playoff team, did make the 3rd round. Right there for the taking, and just made a couple of crucial mistakes late. Otherwise, Hoggard gave them the opportunity to win that game. I realize that's last year, but both teams have lost certain talent in certain areas. Does that even itself out? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the thing Laney, they got to find a way to throw the football, and they did that against Topsail when they needed to. Jordan Cole connected with Connor Poe, and they had made 2 big pass plays, and that's why Laney won the football game. They're going to have to make more than 2 big passing plays, I think, on Friday night, because Hoggard's run defense is so good. I mean, the Vikings gave up 2 touchdowns to West Brunswick Friday. One was on a trick play on the first drive, and the second came on a drive where West Brunswick only had to go 25 yards to find the end zone. So that Hoggard defense is good. Let's see if they can kind of maybe get some momentum rolling again after ending their 3-game losing streak against West Brunswick. Real quick, the other 2 games in the league this week are New Hanover at South Brunswick and Topsail at Ashley. I see New Hanover and Topsail pretty sizable favorites in those 2 games. The Wildcats, I keep wanting to say they're taking care of business in the league so far.
Go ahead and say it.
They're taking care of business. I kind of want to sing the song, but I'll spare y'all for that. My terrible voice. Mackay Stanley, Jaheim Marshall, Chase Nixon, Malik Myers, now offensively a sophomore, is getting involved. There's a lot of weapons there. New Hanover, it feels like that game against West Brunswick's, we're going to talk a lot about that in a couple weeks, and it's coming down, and it's one of the games that I'm really looking forward to this season. That game could go either way, but it feels like New Hanover has the most complete team right now in the league.
Yes.
Not much more to say.
I don't know much more to say than that. You've got all the weapons, and you've got a team that, once again, that close to being undefeated this year, and really should be undefeated this year. And obviously taking nothing away from Jack Britt, very good team, and has pushed Scotland and Richmond to the limits, and will definitely be a force in the 4A playoffs. Yep. But that's another learning experience that Dylan Dimmick can give his guys, and I think New Hanover's still the favorite. It's just, once again, there's just a lot of weapons, and the defense keeps getting better. But West Brunswick's going to have a lot to say about it.
The defense is good. I mean, the defense has been the surprise this year for New Hanover because of just how bad they were last year, but they really turned a corner this year. And I think if that defense can hold West Brunswick to 14 points or something like that, then the offense should be able to score. But that's a game for another week. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but it's hard not to when you're talking about New Hanover right now, because you look at their schedule and they still have Topsail to play before we get to that point, but those final two games of the season, at home against West Brunswick and then at Hoggard, those are kind of two games that look like they're going to define the league from here on out.
And we mentioned North Brunswick and all the changes they've had to go through from the past year to this year, injuries, and I realize New Hanover's got a few more riches when it terms of some talent, but look what they've had to go through and change with a new coach, new offensive scheme. You lost the New Hanover County all-time passing leader. You redid pretty much everything on offense because you wanted to work with your personnel and what you have.
And they redid the defense too, which Coach Fuller told me a couple weeks ago. So
there's a lot of changes, new coaches. Not all coaching staff, of course, guys like Coach Fuller, but a lot of changes for New Hanover this year, where you could easily see before the year, okay, Hanover probably gets slipped up 2 or 3 times by this point, just because of learning a whole lot to learn going into the season. So the fact that they are where they are and a top 10 team in the state, at least by many polls, top 5, says a lot.
Chris Hughes with Carolina Preps had him second in the state. I'm going to fill out my AP poll in just a little bit, and I think I'm not going to quite put him second, but I think I'm going to put him third this week. I mean, they're taking care of business. They are winning games that they're supposed to win by considerable margins, and Jack Britt's a really good football team. They played them close all the way through. I like the Wildcats, and they've gotten better as the years rolled on too.
All we want to hope for, and the state, if you're listening, whatever happens, do not put West Brunswick and New Hanover in the first round of the playoffs.
Please. Topsail actually, I expect huge nights for Cody Wallace and Gavin Ellis, and I think the Pirates should roll in that one. The Screaming Eagles, really tough loss to North Brunswick last week. I didn't expect that game to be so lopsided, but that just shows the kind of athletes that North Brunswick has this year. They're a very talented offensive team. And I also just want to quickly mention 2 of our teams kind of on the fringe of the area have huge games this week. Wallace Rose Hill is going on the road to face undefeated Midway. The Bulldogs beat Goldsboro last week. Midway also won their conference game, so the Blue Raiders are undefeated and 1-0 in the league. Wallace Rose Hill has 2 losses against 2 very talented teams on their schedule in Havelock and Wake Forest, but they're 1-0 in the East Central Conference. And then next week, Wallace Rose Hill plays Clinton. So I think Wallace Rose Hill and their conference championship hopes are going to come down to these 2 weeks here. And then Whiteville hosting Red Springs, 2 of the better offenses throughout the eastern part of North Carolina, and probably the 2 teams that you look at as favorites in the Three Rivers Conference. So Owen, I ask you this: Wallace Rose Hill and Whiteville, 0, 1, or 2 conference champions when the year's over?
Well, I don't think 0. Are you talking about if they...
between Wallace Rose Hill and Whiteville, of those 2, is it 0, 1, or 2 conference champions?
It's 2.
Okay, I agree.
It's 2. I don't know why there's a whole lot of discussion.
Just asking.
You're having a good time.
We got a big game this week for both of them, and hey, if either of those teams gets upset this week, that number from 2 probably goes down. But I agree. I think when it's all said and done, I think they're both going to be conference champions, and they're both going to be high seeds in the two-way playoffs. Maybe those teams meet again because they met last year in the first round. Maybe they'll meet again in a third round game. That'll be a fun one because Whitefield's offense looks like it can score on anybody other than West Brunswick. But so that's it. I appreciate you guys for watching as always every week. Follow along Twitter at StarNewsVarsity, Facebook.com/StarNewsVarsity, and StarNewsVarsity.com. Saturday morning, late Friday night, we'll have all these sorts of game coverage for you and second day stuff. And as always, the Star News goes above and beyond with high school sports coverage. So appreciate you guys for always follow along, and everybody have a great rest of the week.